welcome back. I'm glad we resolved the small misunderstanding, but we're very privileged to have the Microsoft Corporation tonight. And sorry, it's probably early morning somewhere in the US, but we have Jess Panoni, the Microsoft Corporation Assistant General Counsel, and Andreas Piras, the Microsoft Corporation Senior Corporate Counsel. Jess, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. It's not Jesse, but welcome to the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry hearing. I do want to acknowledge Microsoft making the effort to come and make representations. I know probably within your universe, South Africa may be a small part of revenue, but we certainly appreciate the recognition you are giving us, and certainly in our world, Microsoft is large. So very much welcome. I believe you might make a few opening statements, and then we just had some questions for you.
Sounds good. Andreas, are you okay if I go first?
Yeah, Jesse.
So first, thank you for including us in your hearing. My name is Jesse Panoni. You spelled pronounced my name correctly. Thank you for that. I'm an assistant general counsel in the Microsoft legal team, and I work on Bing News, Microsoft Start, otherwise known as MSN, our news platform, and our Bing EU Copyright Directive licensing program. And so I work on a lot of topics that touch news publishers. And I just want to start out by saying Microsoft recognizes the importance of journalism to the health of democratic societies. And we also appreciate the challenges that the journalism industry is facing right now. And we support government efforts to help journalism and to restore healthy journalism. We've supported the EU Copyright Directive. We've supported the Australian and Canadian online news bills and the Journalism Competition and Preservation Act in the U.S. Congress. We endorse these pieces of legislation with the recognition that Microsoft is or will become subject to them, either now or in the future, depending on Bing's share and if Bing grows. We also, in addition to our support of the legislation, we have a program in Microsoft called the Democracy Forward program, which supports journalism. Their mission is to preserve, protect, and advance the fundamentals of democracy by promoting a healthy information ecosystem, safeguarding open and secure democratic processes, and advocating for corporate civic responsibility. They have launched a number of programs to support journalism, including one program to provide AI tools to journalism organizations. They're particularly focused on smaller newsrooms. They're finding that there are news deserts growing where there are no local newsrooms able to provide local news content, and that is one of their focus areas. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andreas.
Thanks so much, Jesse. Thank you so much for having us today. And my name is Andreas Piras. I'm a senior corporate counsel here at Microsoft, and me and my team, we support the Microsoft advertising business, which is the online advertising network of Microsoft, including our tech offering. We support engagements locally through leading trade groups, as well as engagement with lawmakers on a variety of topics pertaining to the advertising technology. All in all, myself, we have about over 15 years of experience in this industry, and again, happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you very much, and I also appreciate, and Paul and I appreciate that the two of you are here, because I think those are the two areas that do interest us. But maybe, Jesse, just the first question. I mean, for many corporations, it might be subject to certain laws. maybe the natural instinct is not to support that process, but you say Microsoft has. I mean, why is Microsoft taking that position, even if it knows it might be subject to that?
I think it starts with our basic premise that we as a company have values. We believe in democracy and the importance of democratic societies, and we think that journalism is fundamental to a healthy democracy. And we see that the journalism industry is declining and in trouble. And we exist in democracies. We're based in the United States, which is a democracy. And we recognize that we see the need to try to help.
Yeah, look, I think that is obviously having the foresight and the long game, and as you say, having some values. But if democracy fails, then I'm sure it's also not a good business environment. So there should be that long-term view, and I think that's what some of the media was saying last week, just having business understand the importance to their own success and growth as well. I just did want to start with search and news, because there has been much said around the value of news on search. But I was interested in your submission, and this is non-confidential. It was part of the response that was not marked as confidential. But and of course we recognize Microsoft is very small in search, but you are active, and so you have insights, I'm sure, from the Microsoft Corporation. But your submission said Microsoft has, as a general matter, included a news vertical and other news-related features in the search engine because it helps attract and retain users. It is well known that searching for news and current events is an important use case for search engines, and many users use search engines for this purpose. Indeed, almost all search engines include a news vertical of some type, as it is more or less expected by users at this point. I mean, maybe if you can just share your insights as someone who's maybe not the largest, but trying to challenge in this space, your insights of why users are looking for news, and then, I mean, you're obviously careful to protect your confidentiality, but some sense from your own surveys of how many people look to use search to find news.
Yeah. So users expect search engines to be a tool to help them find information on the World Wide Web. A key category of information that exists on the World Wide Web and users are interested in accessing is news content. So from that perspective, our users want to be able to search for news. When we say the Bing News vertical, that's an internal term we have for searching for news on Bing and seeing news on Bing. We also have a part of Bing that users can click on, saying that the click indicates they want to see the sort of the most relevant, up-to-date top news search results. So it's both the traditional type in a query and receive the news results. Also, clicking on a news link will bring up pre-populated search results. Those are important functions for users to find the sources of news on the web. We don't think that news is sort of consumed, as that word is understood, through search engines, through Bing. We think the users, and we've designed Bing for this purpose, use search engines to find sources of information about news, and then click through to those sources themselves and read the news stories. We appreciate that there's debate whether that even reading a headline on a search engine is consumption. We designed Bing intentionally to limit the amount of of news information that we provide in our search results. Obviously, it's not the full article. We provide generally just a small thumbnail image and a headline, sometimes a very small snippet of text. The goal of providing this information is to give users relevant information about where they'd be headed on the internet. Without that limited information, they wouldn't know what they're clicking on. So our goal there is to inform users about where to go to find the information on the web from publishers, and not to provide a consumptive experience.
And I mean, the one thing you've highlighted here, which is about attracting and retaining users, and there's been some debate about, whether news is monetized directly through ads or not. And I think your position and that of others has been, look, you don't serve many ads around news content. That tends to be around the sort of commercial intent. But I was interested again in your submission where you go a bit further and say, news-related features help attract and retain users. Moreover, because almost all search engines, Google included, offer news-related features, users have come to expect that these features be offered as part of an internet search engine. If Bing did not offer news-related features, users would likely leave its service. So how do you see, just because an ad doesn't show, it seems you still see value because it's about retaining or attracting users to your service. And if a user leaves, presumably then all their commercial search leaves with them too, where they do get an advert and you do earn revenue. Maybe if you could just unpack that for us, Jesse.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. I agree with your statement that users expect to find news, and if they don't find it in a search engine, they'll go elsewhere. And so satisfying some users' preferences is important to retaining them. Given how small we are, if users can't find news, they'd switch to a different search engine, and they'd switch very easily. We don't think all their value necessarily leaves. Search engines usage is driven by defaults, so they might come back sometimes and still use. To the extent that we had defaults, they might still come back and use Bing.
And I'm just interested in the general, I suppose, offer of a search engine. As you said, people go to a search engine to look for information. If for certain categories you can't get that information, does it color your experience of that search engine, how the consumer might view its abilities to service the needs to find information?
Yes, absolutely. And news is just one of many categories of information that users expect to find on search engines. And Bing being so small, we do struggle with this, especially in markets where we are very small. Some of the search engine content is driven by user inputs, so things like local listings. And so as a very small search engine, these are challenges we face in providing different types of news, or different types of content or search results that users expect. So it's not limited to news. I think users have a number of expectations.
And to what extent is some of the, I'm going to use the word sort of innovation around showing news, things like having carousels, verticals, partly just improving that news experience. Is that part of the sort of retain, or is this just philanthropy?
No, so it's not philanthropy. Search has evolved quite a bit since it first started, 20 plus years ago, as a web page with only blue links, URLs and titles. Users expect a lot of different features and functionality in a search engine. So one of those is a news answer. So if a user types in a search query, that we understand in Bing to be looking for news content. We will deliver a news search result page that will include a news answer at the top, which will prominently feature the relevant search news results. We also have a homepage for Bing that you mentioned, where we show a picture of the day. And sometimes there will be news search results at the bottom of that page, which we think users find useful and engaging. Those are the same search results that we talked about before. They're just shown at the bottom of the page. We also have the news vertical, which you described. These are not new things or only Microsoft inventions. These are sort of commonplace for search engines.
And Jesse, I mean, a question that seems to come up, and we put it in the further statement of issues as well, is what is news? How do you define news? And because how you define it may affect how you obviously measure either the share of impressions or other metrics. I mean, in your submission, and again, I'm careful just to stick to what's non-confidential. I think you went to saying, well, we just looked at how often is the news carousel surfaced or triggered in response to a query. That may be one way. Obviously, that carousel will have its own version of what is news. But does Microsoft have a sort of sense of what is news when asked that question, and when we need to ask that question as the inquiry?
Are you asking this about our product features or about how we calculate EU copyright directive license fees?
No, I wasn't asking about EU copyright directive. It was more a broader sense of how you would define news. I mean, triggering the carousel seemed like one sensible way of looking at this, but that may depend on how your carousel is determined.
Yes, Bing has information integrity principles that we operate by. One of them is we try to deliver the most authoritative search results, and also include the relevance of the user's query. So these are sort of areas of Bing content moderation, you might call it, where we look at the search results and apply different signals to determine what are the most authoritative results. This is an attempt to provide users with accurate information and avoid mis and disinformation. At the same time, we don't normally sort of block news results in all cases, because there are times when users are, based on their search query, very specifically looking for something on the web. How do we define sort of content news versus non-news? I don't think we have any like secret or complicated way of doing that. You know, news is information about current events. You kind of generally know it when you see it, and we do that with Bing and our relevance processes.
Yeah, because I think, just looking at what Bing News says are the criteria to help them evaluate on newsworthiness, it's reporting on timely events, but also topics that are interesting to the people using your services. And it's content that does not focus on reporting, such as how-to articles or job postings or advice columns that would not be considered newsworthy. So it's sort of got that more timely, as you say, topics that are interesting and the reporting aspects to that. But I think it is a difficult thing to pin down. I mean, Google has said on its sort of blogs that only 2% of queries are news queries. Your percentage that may raise in the carousel is confidential, about 2%. What is your experience relative to that, to the extent you can answer?
Well, I mean, it is not a majority of queries on Bing in our experience. It's a small number.
All right, thanks, Jesse. I just want to move on to Microsoft Start, if that's okay.
Sure.
And I think, as you said, Microsoft Start was formerly MS News or MSN, and it's described as a sort of personalized news feed service and was launched, I think, in late 2021. I mean, maybe we can get from you, as you worked on this and its predecessors, is how you would describe Microsoft Start as a service.
Sure. So we've gone through a number of names with it. It started out as MSN, then it became Microsoft News. Now it's Microsoft Start. We still have the MSN website where we display the articles from Microsoft Start and the news articles and videos. I think we call it a news aggregation service. It is a service, like you said, we launched about 10 years ago, where we partner with news publishers around the world. We have a license agreement with them, and in basic non-confidential terms are they give us their news content to host. We put ads next to it, and then we share back some of the revenue of the ads with them. This is a sort of opt-in program in the sense that publishers choose voluntarily to join it because they find the overall value in the program worthwhile. We've signed up thousands of publishers around the world, including many of the most prominent publishers. And we've largely kept them on our platform because they've been happy with the overall value of the deal that they get. So it's a sort of we look at the business as a win-win. They get the opportunity to monetize their content with our user base. And then we get the opportunity to provide engaging news content to our users and build a business on it. We display the full articles and full videos from the partners on MSN. Generally, we also have mobile apps. They get very little usage. And we also promote those articles in our products and services. So that's what you'd call the news feed. So inside of Windows, for example, users can find a news feed, and then they click on the articles that are of interest to them, and it opens up the articles on msn.com.
So, Jesse, if I understand you correctly, it's an opt-in. So if I haven't opt-in as a media publisher, my content won't appear on Microsoft Start. It's not like a general web crawl and you put up articles. You actually license what you use there.
That's correct.
I did just want to go back a little bit to why the change to Microsoft Start, because I think it's useful just trying to understand consumption habits. I think as the panel and also the technical team, you obviously have your personal experience, but the aggregated view rather than the anecdote of yourself, I think is useful because it's just to understand that consumption and when people do look at news and how they look at it. But what did resonate with me, I suppose, is when you did launch it, there was a blog, the Windows Experience blog by Liat Ben-Zur, who I think is a corporate vice president within Microsoft. But I suppose some of the things that sort of come through that, just taking an excerpt from that blog, saying it should be simple to catch up on the things we care about, yet I find it can be overwhelming. I'm inundated with news information and ongoing alerts across online sources, media channels, and devices. And they say in the recent Forrester survey commissioned by Microsoft, we found on average people spend 7 hours a day online using 6 different feeds on a regular basis, and also check their feeds 5 times a day. And it sort of continues to discuss that maybe in the morning I might be checking weather before I start the day, look at some local news, breaking headlines, but I might check in at different points in the day. And I suppose that resonated with me as someone who would maybe read a little more in depth in the morning and see some of the big news, but when I break, say, in between different stakeholders on the hearings, you maybe just want to check, a quick check on what is happening. I mean, maybe if you can assist us in just unpacking how Microsoft understands that consumer behavior in the consumption of news that may sit on Start or any other aggregator.
Well, I can speak to Start, and our goals are to provide relevant news to and sort of other publishing content to users through Start that they find interesting and engaging, to provide a convenient way for them to check it during the day, and then sometimes they may choose to spend more time reading, and sometimes they may just read one article and then get back to whatever else they were doing. We, inside of the article pages, there are additional links to related content in case users want to keep reading or follow up on whatever topic they're interested in or similar topics. I don't have much more else to say on that. Frankly, I'm not an expert on all the user behaviors.
No, well, thank you. I think that at least gives us some insight, and I realize, we're not going to have all the expertise for all of our questions. But I suppose there seems to be, if I've got a short break, I might well headline surf just to see what's happening. I might, as you say, read one article, but then I've got to get back to what I'm doing. When I've got more time, I might do something more in depth. It seems that personalization is also important. Judging from, again, this blog and the design of Microsoft Start is that if I'm going to dip in, I want to see things I know I'm going to be interested in, and so setting out and I think Start can let you set out your preferences. Is personalization an important way to improve take-up and I suppose just usage?
Yes, certainly. So Start uses personalization to provide relevant, engaging topics. Personalization is based off of both what the user chooses as their preferences. If they add that, you can follow topics, you can like or dislike topics and articles in Start, which will affect your personalization. You can also unfollow or follow certain the publishers. So we provide a lot of sort of user control for that. We also look at user data, what articles they've clicked on, as a signal for what information they're interested in. And then we also had have a third element, which is if there's important or breaking news, we'll add that to the content feeds as well.
I may be wrong in this, but I was just thinking we had a comment last week about the addictive nature of the social media scroll, of this infinite content coming through. This is different to search, where search you're trying to look for some information, I think, as you said. Here is trying to put information in front of you that you think people may like. Is this a bit of a way of I suppose, search engines looking at a product that might compete for that user attention from social media?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Are you asking about Microsoft Start's personalization practices?
No, not about the personalization practice, more about the scroll. This is a product that I suppose has a scroll, it's more personalized. That's a big feature of social media, which takes a large chunk of user attention. Whether the move by search engines, because you're not the only one into this, is in essence also looking for some of that attention. But you're not a social media platform, so you don't have that feed, but with the kind of things that a search engine has access to.
Yeah, so Bing doesn't operate like a social media platform. I'm not aware of any endless scrolls on Bing. And I think our goals are different, where our goals are to provide based on what the users want, our goals are to provide the users with relevant information about what their query was, and not to keep them engaged in an endless scroll type scenario.
All right, because I was also interested that the research that was referred to as the digital distraction research. So is your goal with this sort of more efficient and to avoid extended digital distraction? Or what was the objective, just to provide one place to easily access news?
So in Bing, our primary goal is to provide users the most relevant search results to their query. If we don't provide that to them, we expect that they will find other search engines that do that. Generally, people don't want to spend time looking for their search results. What we find is very few click on the second page, for example.
Just on convenience, and it was interesting you said your app doesn't do so well. But Microsoft obviously is big in desktop operating systems, and it sits there. I'm on a Windows operating system. It sits here and I can quickly access. But on a mobile phone, you have an app. So does the convenience affect usage by people?
Yeah, I think defaults, Microsoft has said this, drive a significant amount of search usage. So Microsoft doesn't have any defaults in Android or iOS. So accordingly, our search share there is very small.
And something that sort of came out last week from many of the media is how big the traffic they're getting from Google Discover. Google Discover is the default, I suppose, on any Android phone and is easily accessible. Do you think that has something to do with driving those volumes?
Yeah, I do. So the default service on devices will for search engines get the most usage, and that will search engine usage drives traffic. Does that make sense?
No, thanks. I don't have any more questions on Start, but I did want to move to AdTech. If Andreas, I know again you have a small position. Obviously, Microsoft advertising serves its own search and display ads, and you have recently acquired Xandr. As I understand in the sort of terminology, it's a DSP, demand-side platform, to display third-party ads. Can I just understand why make an investment in someone to serve third-party ads when you have your own internal already? Just a bit of context to that acquisition, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. As you mentioned, the Microsoft advertising platform is comprised of search advertising and native advertisements, and then most recently the acquisition of Xandr, which we finalized in 2022. I would say that Xandr is really an ad tech platform that operates across both sides of the business, both the supply side and the demand side. And so Xandr sits a bit in the in between, and I think the main goal is really to bridge the gap between the connecting buyers and sellers in the advertising industry. So we have an offering for web publishers that is used to sell ad space and digital media properties, and then the offering on the advertiser side, which is how we source the demand for those publisher spaces. The main reason for the acquisition is really to accelerate Microsoft presence in programmatic advertisement. It really was essential for the company to really expand the offering into the more traditional, let's say, programmatic digital space, branching out from the search and native business.
I mean, I'm interested, you said it operates on both sides. It seems the ad tech area is evolving. I mean, we always sort of understood DSPs stay on the DSP side. You got ad exchanges, you got supply side platforms as well, and you got ad servers. But it does seem that that space has become a little more fluid. I mean, what are the changes you're seeing in the ad tech world in terms of those components? Are they increasingly integrated and different channels?
Well, I would say that as far as Microsoft is concerned, the main change that we had in the space is really with the acquisition of Xandr at this point. There's certainly an industry that is very fluid. There's certainly an industry that is evolving. I think you would see how the programmatic advertising in general has, in a way, revolutionized the way that inventory is monetized. I wouldn't say that the two sides conflate. I think there's offering like Xandr, they are positioned to cater to both sides of the equation, the buyers and sell side. But there's distinct purposes that they each serve. On the supply side, the publisher is obviously in need of monetizing content. And on the demand side, you have advertisement that want to push their marketing messages. So I think the distinct purposes, they converge into maybe the one offering platform, which we have with Xandr. They're really able to sit across both and cater to both to make that process of buyer selling advertising more efficient through programmatic spending.
And although you've got an integrated, I mean, what we understand in ad tech is that typically any DSP can sell to through any exchange to any SSP, and many SSPs might be selling the same inventory from a publisher side. You look like you queried that, but this is, we're only just starting this week to explore this area, and so, I mean, is that the case, that there's this seamless interoperability across all systems where you have multiple competitors at each point in the system, or if that's not the case, maybe if you can just give us some context to how it does work.
Yeah, certainly. Just to rephrase your question, I think you're asking about the interoperability and the integration of systems across different providers across the industry. So if I understood your question correctly, I would say that I will start, obviously, I think you hinted early on that there's obviously restrictions on other platforms, which we really comment much on those. As far as we are concerned, obviously, the small presence in South Africa, I think we don't have a strong opinion on the issue of interoperability pertaining to the local market. Not to say it's not an important issue, but certainly larger platform might be best positioned to answer that question at large. I would say that one thing that's been really good for interoperability has been things like the header bidding. What the header bidding really is a solution that then enable the publisher to sell the ad space, the ad inventory to multiple providers simultaneously. So multiple SSP and DSP can actually bid on their inventory. This makes the auction process more seamless as well as more transparent and open. So I think header bidding itself is actually a solution that's been really good for the interoperability component. We do offer an header bidding solution. We support display video and other ad types across that. So we're certainly in favor, and we made good strides toward interoperability within the advertising ecosystem.
And Andreas, I mean, I'm glad you raised it because this gets quite technical, and this is where obviously we need to at least deepen our understanding. And part of the purpose of the public hearings is also to educate the public and the media on what can be sometimes highly technical and impenetrable topics. But I mean, as I understand, there are multiple bidding, but Xandr is header bidding, and you've tried to give us a bit of a description there. We then, as I understand, have open bidding on Google, and I've also heard about open real-time bidding as an industry standard. So, I mean, I may be confused on some of these, but maybe if you could just give us a sense of the differences across them and why you've gone with header bidding.
So I would say on within the realm of my technical knowledge, you're right. This is an area that gets very technical very quickly. I think that there's obviously a technical knowledge and understanding that might not entirely possess. I would say that at the high level, just to take it a step back, what you refer as real-time bidding really is the form of programmatic advertisements really allow the buyer selling of advertising in real time. And so if you go to a website or an open a mobile app, their inventory could be sold programmatically through a real-time bidding, which is obviously a way to optimize their delivery real time. As far as the integration within other platform, I'm not in a position to discuss third-party solutions, but in terms of what Microsoft and the offering that we have for Xandr, it's header bidding is obviously open source and it's free, and that's one solution that really enables the publisher to monetize, as I mentioned, more effectively. As far as the integration of other solutions, I cannot comment on it, but I think from my perspective, is a more efficient, better way to monetize from a publisher perspective.
Right, and it seems you may not want to comment on some of that, but let me just at least ask. I mean, we're all aware that there has been litigation in numerous countries against some of the Google ad tech products. I mean, I hear you probably don't want to go there, but I just wanted to know is more what has happened? Have things changed in the market subsequent to some of those?
Again, I'm not in a position to comment on third-party solutions and some of those actions. I'm going to comment on our own Microsoft solution. I would say we think that open bidding could have certain policy restriction in place. Might not make it always practical for integrated platform to participate, but these are, again, from our point of view, I would just probably defer to others on question that pertains to third-party solutions.
No problem. And is header bidding becoming more of a standard? Because it seems you pick your path. I mean, is this getting traction in the ad tech world?
Yeah, I believe the solutions like the header bidding are certainly getting more prevalent in the industry. As I mentioned early on, the programmatic advertising in general in the industry has been evolving towards a more programmatic and efficient way of selling. And solutions like header bidding that do allow multiple participants to be present and fill those slots, and then more open, transparent bidding process are certainly taking off in the industry, and we see that obviously as a natural progression of the online advertising industry.
I mean, maybe, I don't know if between you, Jesse, and Andreas, you're able to talk about this sort of Bing Copilot and AI integration, whether that's something you're able to engage on.
Sure, I can. Do you have specific questions, or do you just want me to give you kind of an overview of what our product is and our goals?
Well, I think let's start with the product overview and goals. Again, we're just trying to unpack this, and we in fact had someone from the university, a Professor Marivati, come and try to give us the public a what is AI lesson last week. But much like the ad tech, it gets very technical very soon. But I think we just had a few questions just so that we have a good understanding. But please start with the overview.
Sure. So Microsoft has a number of AI products. AI has been around for a long time, but I think what you're referring to is the newer technology that Microsoft and others have started using, generative AI, specifically like large language models. So Bing uses a generative AI in a new version of Bing that we started out calling Bing Chat. Now we call it Copilot in Bing. Microsoft has a number of AI products called Copilot. Many of them or all of them are not really about news or search. So, for example, you can get Copilot in Word and Outlook. Those are to help you with your productivity. What I'm going to talk about is Copilot in Bing, which is our AI-powered search engine experience. And the most important thing to know is it's still search. It is not meant to provide an alternative to users searching and finding news on the web. It is meant to provide users with a new, better experience to find the news that they want on the web. So how it works is typically a user would type in a search query into a search box and get back news answers, news results, like we've talked about. You all know what those look like. Now what happens with the new Copilot in Bing is there's an AI model that sits there in between the user and the Bing search results, and it translates the search results into short, simple, natural language that the user can understand. So instead of seeing a headline and a snippet and maybe a thumbnail, the user will see something that says this news publisher is reporting maybe X, Y, Z, and then there'll be a link there to go read more and search out on the web. And we're excited about this. We think it's a new way to search. We're also realistic that in our experience so far, and it doesn't seem to be changing the overall business dynamics, unfortunately, and it's not going to really significantly make us all of a sudden much more competitive and gain a ton of market share versus others.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask that. I mean, you use the OpenAI's ChatGPT as that foundational model, which of course got hugely popular, and it has probably helped drive some users to Bing. I think you say as much online, but is it more of a seismic shift, or is it a smaller shift in the market?
We're not seeing a significant shift in market dynamics. It's not significantly growing our share of search. We do see that users enjoy it, and when users use it, they do more searching on regular Bing, which we think is a good thing, both to drive traffic to websites and publishers and, to help us run a better search engine. It's also important to know ChatGPT is not our product. We do have a deal with OpenAI where we use their GPT models, but ChatGPT is a separate product from Bing.
Yeah, and that's our understanding, that you've got the foundational model that may operate as its own chatbot, but AI gets sort of appended to different services, and then as well, this is what I wanted to understand, and you sort of said it sits in between. But so the model and how that's developed, that's a separate question. But once it's put inside your search, I mean, that process of inserting in the search between the user and the search results, I don't know if you can help us unpack that, because in our discussion last week, it seemed you still need the search indexing as an information source or database that is used then by, I suppose, the AI component, and it still needs that element of search, which I'm looking for something. Tell me. So, can you just explain how your search index comes to play a role in this providing an answer?
Yeah, I can explain it, and there's also some public blogs that the Bing team has released that do an excellent job of explaining how we built this new version of search. I can share those with you as well. So we internally called this technology Prometheus, and it's important to understand that LLMs generally take a long time to train, and then once they're trained, they don't have new information. So you can't ask an LLM what's the latest news about, a sports league. The LLM doesn't know. So what Bing provides is, an up-to-date search engine that crawls the whole web and does all the relevancy processes that I described, and then provides those search results to the LLM model, the foundational model, which then, with a set of instructions that say, turn these search results into very short, essentially overviews, or we call them answers. And then those get displayed back to the user in more of a chat user engagement model. And then they're displayed as text, and they link off both. They include attribution, so links at the bottom of the chat, and also the actual answers themselves are links to drive users to the news articles that they want to find. So it requires the LLM to do a couple of things. One, it needs to interpret the user's chat question into a search query and then send that to Bing. And then it needs to interpret those Bing search results and turn them back into a chat answers for the user. If you use Copilot in Bing, we actually show this. So if you say, share the latest news about, whatever news topic, you'll actually see it give you a little notice. It says searching for, and then you can see what you asked it turned into a search result in the actual product itself. Does that help kind of explain how it works?
Yeah, I think so. A question I just had in the search engine side, because I think we were trying to visualize what sits in an index. But as I understand, index is there so you can respond rapidly. We can't get a search result in 0.15 seconds unless the web has been indexed, because you're going to crawl an index. So is it just getting from your index, or is Bing going to then also fetch information from the site itself?
Just from the index. And you're right that that's generally how that's how search engines work. They don't crawl the web for each query. They crawl the web generally. It's a lot of information. They bring it together into an index. that can be queried and provide relevant answers or relevant search results very quickly.
No, thanks, because there were a number of questions arising last week about, blocking AI crawlers, blocking also search crawlers and other crawlers. We got into quite a long discussion, but it seems blocking the AI crawler is blocking maybe OpenAI building their foundational model and training, but it's not going to help in blocking, I suppose, the use of that model in Bing, because it's the Bing crawler that's going and doing the work. I mean, maybe if you can just help us understand that a little better.
Yeah, there are definitely multiple uses. So Bing meets with publishers. We want to work with them to hear their concerns and address them. One of the concerns we heard was they want controls over how the new Bing uses their data and displays search results. And we also heard that they want controls on whether Microsoft trains our own models, our generative AI models, with their content. So Bing released controls that enable publishers to do both. They can opt out of Microsoft training them, and they can also training with their data, and they can also opt out of appearing in Copilot and Bing if they don't want to be in that experience. We also have a lot of controls for standard Bing as well that we've been using for a long time. Whether AI has controls and what those controls do and how they work as a question for AI. My general understanding is right now that most major companies are offering their own controls. Microsoft would support and work towards standard controls that would apply to the industry. We're obviously not in control of that. We can't force that, but we're supportive of that. We think it's good for publishers, and we'd want to work towards that.
And is that likely? Because it seems you almost, I think as people put it last week, you've got to actively stop the crawl. It's not as though the crawler comes and asks permission otherwise. So it takes a sort of effort from the publisher side just to know who's out there crawling, how to block it, and what the protocols are. So do you think an industry standard is likely to emerge?
I don't know. I can tell you that industry standards emerged for standard search.
It's the robot exclusion, if I understand.
Yeah, there's others as well. So there's some tags that allow publishers to be more granular in the size of their thumbnails and that are there in search results and the size of their snippets, things like that. We those particular ones, I believe, are just Google announced tags, but Bing just follows them as well.
And just so I understand, when you say, I mean, you've got these different controls from the publishers. So the one is the training. Can I opt out of Copilot but remain in search? Or is that a package together?
I believe so. I'd have to go back and check because it's a little bit technical. It's definitely in our blog. So whether that's allowed or not, whether that our control covers that or not, but I believe so.
All right. Well, yeah, we'd appreciate if you can. Not obviously now, but I think just to let us know so that we understand. I just did want to also unpack the user interaction, because that's been another concern from the publishers. And I think the concern is whether this will decrease traffic or increase traffic. And you said earlier that there'd been an increase in traffic. But I just did want to unpack that because we've got, Bing increasing, even though it's not seismic change in the industry, is still Bing growing, which generates more traffic in itself. I suppose the question more crisply is click-through rates and how those have evolved under Copilot as opposed to search. And I don't know if you've done any research at Microsoft to see and whether that research is also specific to different areas, but maybe you can just indicate what you understand to be happening with click-through rates.
I'm sorry, I don't know the click-through rates on our different search offerings.
I mean, is this something that Microsoft's researching just to see how Copilot may be affecting click-through rates?
I believe so, but I'm not sure the specifics of it. I can say, like what I said before, I can reiterate that we intentionally have built Copilot in Bing to provide very short news answers to encourage click-through rates. It is our goal to encourage click-through rates, but I don't know the details of the data.
Again, if that is something you can find for us, because I think there's certainly strong interest, and some of the discussion last week was also whether that may differ depending on the type of query, and so I think it would be helpful to know for news as opposed to something else like exploring options to book my holiday, where ultimately I may want to click through because I need to book or pay for things. So I think we'd appreciate that if you can look for that, Jesse.
Okay, we will.
I mean, as I understand, the sort of classic search, I suppose, is click-through rates do depend on your ranking. So click-through rate at the top is generally much higher than the next item in the list, and so on. I suppose this is a slightly different with the Copilot because you get the sources at the bottom, and it may depend on the number of sources. But how does Bing determine which sources to reflect? Given it may look at a number of sites, but it's got to choose which ones it's going to source. So how does that happen?
The benefit of Copilot and Bing is that it leverages all the work we've done in relevance, which is looking at the user's intent, which sometimes is quite complex, to determine what they're looking for exactly on the web and displaying the most relevant search results. It also leverages all of Bing's work in authority to provide the most authoritative sources of information based on signals. We use our own signals, and we partner with third parties. So what Copilot in Bing displays is the same links you'd get at the top of a Bing search page. The experience is slightly different, and the user would have to type in "show me more" answers rather than click or scroll, but it's basically the same.
And do users click on "show me more," or is that something you'd have to go and find out for us?
There's not really a "show me more" button. It would be more of again, this is a chat experience with the AI. So users would have to type "show me more."
And then that would fetch more content based on relevancy and authority.
It should, yes.
Yeah, because I think just looking at what some of the discussion, even on online and your blogs and the like, there is a a drop-off and click-throughs on the normal search list, but of course if you're not in the sources, you're also not then necessarily visible. So depending on the tendency for people to click through, at least you have to be in the source list if you're going to get the click-through in the first place. Otherwise you're not on a scrollable list like you have in search. So ranking may become far more important in a Copilot or chat type environment. Is that a fair comment, or what's your view?
Well, ranking is important in standard search. I would expect it to be important in the new AI version of search as well. Long term, I would only be speculating at how this is going to evolve. It's still early days.
I think that is the challenge for everyone, is we don't know how users are going to change their behavior and how they might use these tools. And that creates, I think, a fair bit of uncertainty for users. So I just want to pick up on a few, it seems how much they click through is also something you can't tell us now, but you'll get back to us to see if Microsoft has any research on that.
Yeah, I'll discuss with counsel, and we'll let you know.
All right, and just so I also understand, I mean, you mentioned in start that that there's a revenue share, but one of your sort of, I think, blogs had indicated, and it may be about a year ago when it was still called Bing Chat, but that you were looking at potential revenue share options for start partners that shared their content to assist Bing Chat. So I know it's now evolved into being called Copilot, but what happened to that? At that stage, I think the announcement was just you exploring. So how has that developed, if at all? Maybe you can just update us.
Yeah, I think it's I can describe to you what we did. So it's important to understand Microsoft Start is a licensed news platform, and Bing Chat, or Copilot in Bing, is a search engine which crawls the web and displays search results to users. Those are generally not licensed. So even though these are two completely separate businesses with different principles and license terms, our products don't completely exist separately. And there is what we tried to do is take some licensed content from Microsoft Start, put it in a Microsoft Start module that sits next to the chat, essentially, next to the chat box in the experience. And then, the Microsoft Start usage is licensed, and that's something that I've already described we pay for. And that's what this program was. It was not paying publishers for appearing in Copilot and Bing.
I mean, maybe just help me, just so I understand. I mean, so you say it's not paying them to appear in Copilot and Bing, but from what I got from the sort of blog is that they might have revenue share if they share their content. So that's the content that you have licensed. Is that correct?
We're not putting their... So this, again, it's a little bit technical, but these are two separate services. They can exist, and the user can see both of them at the same time. what we did was we took a piece of the Microsoft Start service, we put it in the Bing chat general area. It's still Microsoft Start, even though it appears there. It's not.
Would it be relevant to what the chat is happening, or they're just having it alongside?
Yeah, it's relevant to the chat. So if a user searches for, a specific news topic, and there are Microsoft Start, there's Microsoft Start news content on that topic, the Microsoft Start experience appears in chat, and then if users click on that, they're in the Microsoft Start. They go to MSN.
All right, so it's almost trying to align so it can speak to each other, and if there's any Microsoft Start content that is relevant to the chat I'm engaged in, that'll be triggered, much like, say, triggering your news carousel, and it appears next to it, and that is another option. But
yeah, that's right. It's just another option for users to engage with news content. We heard from publishers that they want an opportunity to control and participate in Copilot and chat, and this was something we were trying out.
And so it has happened. Has it been relatively successful, or too early to say?
I think it's been successful in that we continue to experiment and try new things to support publishers, and this is one thing we tried. I don't think it's hugely significant, frankly.
All right, you'd mentioned the sort of authoritative and relevancy. We have heard a lot this last week about the concern over mis and disinformation that is available. I think, to be fair, I think a lot of that was focused on social media more than search, but we did ask whether there's a search element as well. And some of the publishers said, yes, it's not to the same extent. But, in looking for authoritative and avoiding mis and disinformation, because certainly even within Copilot, you don't want to be putting up a wrong answer that has led to some embarrassment for some AI models in the past. But what are your Microsoft controls around mis and disinformation in order to stop that flow?
So I could speak to some of this generally, but this is also not, I don't support generally Bing, so this is not my area of expertise. So I can tell you that this is a very important issue for us, and we invest in it greatly. And Bing is been operating as a search engine and has made great progress in its work on these issues. Because of the way that we've set up Copilot in Bing, where the answers you get back are based on Bing search results, it leverages all of that good work that we have done in Bing. Specifically for Copilot and the use of AI, Microsoft has responsible AI policies, and our AI features go through a responsible AI review. We do red team testing, and we know this is new technology. It's not always going to be perfect, but we iterate very quickly and fix any issues we discover.
And one concern that was raised was also, in a sense, it has an AI angle, but AI tools being used to mimic a news organization, take its content, rewrite it, so to speak, and use that to drive ad revenue. Where Microsoft becomes aware of that, are those sort of sites likely to surface in your search results and direct consumers to those sites, or how do you control that sort of new, I mean, this is new, but that new type of what they call ad fraud?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for Bing's purposes, part of being authoritative is doing original reporting. So sites that are just copying, whether they're using low cost vendors or people to create news articles, or whether they're using AI or a combination of to create news articles that are no original reporting. Bing's efforts are to prioritize the authoritative original reporting news publishers. On the Microsoft Start side, we do have content standards for the publishers that we let on, and we are working to address. I don't have anything to announce right now, but we are working to address these issues as well.
So just from a search engine side, I just had the question. I mean, if you identify a site as more of a clickbait or other than that, I mean, do you still index it, or you just put it way down on quality and other measures?
So search engines at its core, like I said, are to help users find the information that they're looking for. So we generally would focus our news answers or news search results on the most authoritative, without necessarily excluding sites or blocking them, because there are a lot of scenarios where we can tell from the user's query that they are specifically looking for that. Like an obvious example, if you're looking for sites that are spreading misinformation, a search engine is a key tool in doing that. Andreas might have something to add here.
Yeah, thank you. No, I want to go back just a minute on two important topics that you raised on disinformation, misinformation, as well as the issue of clickbaits. I have to say they've been involved in several efforts pertaining to fighting disinformation also across the advertising ecosystem. So we've been participating in voluntary code of practices for a number of years, and we've instrumented a number of checks and balances in place to prevent this type of harmful content on our services. On the ad side, we have a strong, robust editorial process in place and additional policies that we implement. Those are rules of conduct for our customers that we enforce through both manual and automated means. And so even though it's been obviously a difficult issue to tackle, particularly in the realm of like political speech or other high priority event or high risk events like the COVID crisis, for example, I would say that on the advertising side, and this is also true for other services like our Bing search engine, we have a good grasp and certainly instrumented checks to prevent the serving of disinformation and misinformation. On the clickbait piece, we are certainly aware of the issue they would present, but I would say that that's unfortunate for us, and our services may be exploited by bad actors that are really trying to circumvent on checks in an attempt to really, so the clickbait model really does lure users into interacting with advertising content onto third-party sites. That's something obviously we don't permit and we don't allow. We consider that to be a breach of our agreement, and we take several actions as a result of these behaviors. Those bad actors tend to be some more sophisticated than others. So admittedly, it's an area where we constantly strive to improve and to preserve the positive experience. And we don't look at positive experience solely in the context of the end users, but also overall legitimate advertisers and the publishers alike. So that's just our position on clickbait, and certainly an issue that we face just like everybody else within the industry, I suppose.
And I think the concern is with AI that this is going to get considerably worse. And maybe that is also trying to look into the future, but But I think many in the media are concerned that the proliferation of content that's so easy with AI tools that may make the problem worse. I mean, do you think there's I mean, I hear you that you're sort of constantly trying to keep up, and some are more sophisticated. I mean, are you confident in an AI era that you can win that battle?
Well, I will say this, AI certainly is a new technology, and the bad actors, those nefarious actors, tend to exploit any new technology to their advantage. So the work that we are doing, obviously, as Microsoft, we put a lot of emphasis on responsible AI standards. We put a lot of emphasis in security measures to prevent such behaviors. So certainly, I'm confident in our ability, also as an industry, to put up with the challenges, if you will. I have to say that having worked in this industry for so many years, the bad actors adjust to the checks, and that's where obviously there's going to be some work that has to be done in this respect. But I don't want to speculate on how nefarious players might misuse legitimate technologies for illegitimate purposes. That's obviously still, I think, early days. I won't speculate further, but I reiterate the fact that we put a lot of emphasis and dedicate a lot of resources in preventing and addressing such negative experiences across our services and the industry in general.
I just had a few last questions, just stemming out of some of the discussions we've had. And Andreas, as you've been answering questions now, let me start with this issue of third-party cookies. We heard from a few media agencies today about how they're trying to plan for this eventuality and what impact they see it may have. I mean, does Microsoft have a view on that? You're only just getting into the ad tech side, I realize that, but I'm sure you've thought about this, and what's your perspective on how this may play out?
Yeah, no, as you mentioned, it's a new topic. It's a topic that we're following closely here. I will say that as Microsoft, we understand that how the industry might be evolving in the future. And then we are planning and preparing for what will be a different digital advertising ecosystem. It's obviously not the first time that the industry makes changes and that we will need to adapt. So I would say that it's something fairly new that is coming up within the industry. I think we have obviously other industry participants that are also working on such solutions, and we'll defer to them for further comment. But as I mentioned, it's still early days for the deprecation of third-party cookies, but I'm sure it's an area that will evolve, soon.
I suppose the question from earlier was really whether this will mean that those bigger, I think the person was using walled gardens that have a lot more data might be set to gain even more in this environment relative to the smaller players who, with a website, who may have some information on their visitors, but now loses the information of some of the interests of the visitor because we can't track where they've come from. I mean, is that something you've thought about how that dynamic may play out?
I'm sorry, I want to rephrase the question. I'm not quite sure on the questions. Are we still discussing the issue you just raised
third-party
earlier?
Cookies, yeah.
Possible third-party cookies. Yeah.
So take some information away from, let's say, the single website, because you don't have that following. So people would have bid on your site because before I went to your site, I looked at searching for, I think we used the example of hiking boots, and now I come to your new site, and the third-party cookie says, I've got someone here who's interested in hiking boots. And so that information may be lost to those individual websites. But the big content drivers, like some of the social media or search that have a lot of user information, might be advantaged in this new world. I don't know if Microsoft had a view on that, or whether both will be equally disadvantaged. Or
well, as I mentioned, it's still early days in the development process. I don't know if we have data in hand that could be indicative of these changes within the industry. I'm not entirely sure it's about the first-party data as much as about data sharing across services, and these are new technologies that would still support monetization model. As far as your questions, I wouldn't want to speculate on a very new technology and the future repercussions across the industry.
Thank you, Andreas. I mean, maybe just the last two areas. There's what we're seeing, at least in South Africa, is that community media says they battle on search to get visibility. And they seem to have a little more success on social media. But on something like even a Microsoft Start, which might want to give me local weather and some, let's say, geospecific information, I mean, is there push to bring some of the more community-based content onto that service, or is it more sort of broader national headline stuff that might be in the presence of mainstream media?
We have actually launched, and we're continuing to launch, an onboarding pathway for smaller community publishers and smaller creators even to join Microsoft Start. So that the previous sort of typical way that publishers would join is, we would literally just call them or communicate and ask them to join and tell them about the benefits of being part of the service. And that's how we initially launched this business, with a big push worldwide to sign up publishers. Those were large. We have limited resources. Those were, generally speaking, larger publishers. Since then, we have realized that there's this opportunity for smaller local newsrooms, local community publications, and then even smaller creators to get onto the platform. And what we're launching is a website. It's a portal where even really small publishers, even a blogger, could apply to join. They still have to meet our content standards, and they get the same deal. And their content can be published, and then it'll be surfaced, and through our personalization, it'll be surfaced, to users in the relevant places and markets. The smaller publishers can also choose to limit where they're published, right? If they only want to be, for example, in certain countries, they can choose that as well.
And are you going to be rolling that out in South Africa too?
I don't know when, but we're slowly working our way through the countries. We just launched a number of countries this past winter, or sort of late fall. I don't know exactly when the plan is to include South Africa.
And Jesse, I mean, you mentioned obviously some criteria for also being accepted. I mean, the situation in South Africa is that all your even independent and community are part of a press code, certain standards. Is your criteria around that sort of standard, or is there other criteria that would be applied?
I'm not familiar with your standards, but I assume they're things like journalistic ethics,
Correct, yeah.
reporting accurate information, not publishing mis and disinformation. Those would be sort of obvious top level requirements. And we definitely have those. I think it's important to understand Microsoft Start is not a search engine product. Users don't search for Microsoft Start content; they're presented with it. We want to run it responsibly and only include quality news content on it.
Yeah, because I suppose the community news, wouldn't have thresholds like how many sort of millions of views or the like. It's a community by its very nature. So is the emphasis not on volume but more on quality?
Yeah, the standards are about the quality, not the volume of the content. So we don't have you need to have this many users or this much circulation. I mean, if you put very limited community sort of content that's limited to a very narrow audience, our personalization probably won't display it to users who aren't interested in it, right? Like if it's information that's very specific to one small country, we're not going to share it with users in a different country who speak a different language, for example. And because that wouldn't be a good user experience, that's not what they're looking for from a news aggregator platform.
Yeah, and it may be that, the community newspaper in a town, that may be the main interest. But your personalization and your sort of localization would still pick them up for the news feed. I mean, based on now that you are rolling it out, are people where it has been rolled out seeing increasing community news?
I don't have specific numbers, but we are definitely signing up a lot of smaller publishers, and I can tell you the numbers we have generally. Hold on. Yeah, it's in thousands. So thousands of new smaller publishers. I don't know off the traffic that they're getting generally. I will say one of the challenges again that we face is Microsoft Start is somewhat similar to search in that defaults matter. Most of our users are there because of Microsoft Start being the default, and that means that we are constrained by the number of defaults we have, and that also constrains the amount of traffic we can drive generally to all of the Microsoft Start partners, and other aspects of the business, similar to the search.
Sorry, yes, and obviously your market size may impact whether you decide to roll out or not. Can I just ask on the other thing you just raised there about language? Because I think what we have heard last week is that certainly for publishers in vernacular languages in South Africa that isn't English, they battle on search to get presence. They find that it's a battle for search to sensibly, I suppose, interpret and feed relevant information to them in their own language. I mean, is search in different languages a challenge? A challenge for search engines, and if so, what are those challenges?
So I could say as we are a very small search engine, and as such, we have much more limited scope and breadth to our resources to build features to support a lot of smaller markets that say that if you were a larger search engine, you could build. So from that perspective, yeah, we do find generally in search being so small, we do find that supporting smaller markets and smaller audiences is an additional challenge we do have. I have not heard specifically any details about users and languages like you mentioned, but that would be generally consistent with some of the things we've learned from running Bing.
So just from what I get from that, I mean, if you're very small in a particular area where language is used, it's hard for you to make a business case to invest in that. And if you haven't invested in that, I suppose you're not going to easily understand which content is relevant when you crawl and index. And so that does make search results going to be less accurate or just difficult to do entirely. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, although I would say that it's not driven necessarily just by business decisions. These are sometimes often technical limitations. So I think a good example that I can elaborate on that I brought up before, which is local data, right? So let's say you're in a very small country and you want to find a restaurant. If you search in our search engine, those restaurants probably haven't registered with us because they don't get any significant traffic from Bing. And you, as a user, you just won't find the same quality and breadth of restaurant search results or local business search results. We call that local. It's a big challenge for running a small search engine, and some of these are technical limitations. Like it's like a chicken or the egg. Like we can't get more users until we have, unless we. It helps not having local hurts our ability to get users. There's other reasons why we get less users, but then we can't get better local until we have more users.
And just so I understand the technicalities, I mean, if you're going to index and rank on quality and relevancy, you need to understand the language on that page in order to do it when you crawl through, I would assume.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is not all search results are crawled. Some of them are things that you maybe need to have users input. So local is a good example. Like a lot of the local listings are driven by the actual business signing up, putting in their correct information, and it can't easily be gleaned or put together just from crawling the web.
No, I appreciate that. So I think we heard that, in crawling the web, even then, if I put up a website, I've got to somehow say, hey, I'm here, come and crawl me. So there's that. But I suppose what you're saying is almost registration with the service, saying, here are the details you need to display my local restaurant in your local search.
Yeah. Here's our phone number. Here's how we take reservations. Here's our menu. Here's pictures of the food in our restaurant. And typically they're not really interested in doing that on very small search engines. That's just one example of a vertical. Just generally understanding data in order to operate a search engine. When you don't have a lot of usage, it becomes a lot harder to figure out relevancy and to provide. Search. If we don't have a lot of users searching in a specific language, it's harder to understand when the user wants to see that particular language, and what are the best search results to deliver to them. These are all just challenges of our really small scale.
But just from a technical perspective on language, you would have to be able to understand the language in order to index and rank and grade, or not?
I think so. I'm not an expert in that area, but that makes sense.
And is Start better with language in the sense of you could sign up, let's say you're doing the local thing, you could sign up publications that might be in a language other than English, and they may have relevance from their location to users in that area? Or is that equally difficult to do language as search?
I think Start is a little bit more, it's easier maybe in some ways and a little bit more limited in other ways. So, Start is something that we have to build for like we build a version of it for South Africa, right? And that requires resources, and to build a version out for South Africa, we would need to make a decision whether there's enough resources or there's enough users in that market to justify all of the engineering and other effort to build two versions of it for each language. We do have some markets where we do have two versions, but it's different from search. Like I'll just give you an example. There's two versions of the U.S. Start, right? There's an English language U.S. Start, and then there's a Spanish language U.S. Start.
All right, and then I would set my preference on language if I'm in the US, and then it would work on that.
Yeah, and we don't have like a French version of news in the US, for example. You could set it to France. And generally, we find that's, again, given limited limitations and resources, generally we find that that's works for the most of our users. We will expand if we can justify the extra business costs and expenses of running in a market.
All right, but so just to round that up and to wrap up, I mean, you'll have a French Start, but trying to get French content for US interests might be more of the challenge. Is that the?
Yeah, and there's just not a market for it. There's not user demand. So Start's a business that we base on user demand. It's different from search. Search is, we're trying to provide a search engine that's useful for all users. But Start is, we're trying to provide a product, a specific news feed, news aggregator service. And we don't have the resources, and it probably doesn't make sense to provide a tailored version of it for every single market. That wouldn't make sense financially, and we don't have the product resources to support it. We support a lot of markets, and we have fallbacks. So if you're in a market we don't support, we might give you the news from very close country, or we have worldwide versions in Spanish, French, and English, I believe.
Well,
does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think that does. I mean, look, as you say, you are small. You obviously aspire to be bigger, and investing in the product, but there may be limits that you face until you get that larger presence. It is that wretched chicken and egg situation, as you say, with two-sided platforms. But Jesse and Andreas, I did want to thank you both for making the time. I know you have a hard cutoff in a few minutes, so I think let's wrap up the discussion. And I think certainly it's helped us learn a fair bit, not just about Microsoft, but also just some of the back end of what is now changing quite fast. And I certainly think the public and the media that no doubt have tuned in will also have learned about a little more about what some of those black boxes are and what happens inside them, and how those decisions are made. So we do appreciate Microsoft's ongoing support for the inquiry, the submissions you've made. I think an inquiry like this is evidence-based and needs to at least gather information if it's going to make sense of the issues that we need to make findings on. And going forward, we will, I think, still continue to ask where relevant, where we do need some information, and we appreciate that ongoing commitment. But thank you, and I suppose you're just getting started with your day, wherever you are. But we're going into the evening, but we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak here, and we definitely support your efforts.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And that wraps up day 6 of the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry. Tomorrow morning we do start slightly early at 9:30, just to accommodate the Google search people who have flown into South Africa to participate. And that session will run for about 4 hours.